Imagine just a small, sleek sticker on your arm. Like, it looks like a high-tech athletic patch, maybe something a marathon runner would wear.
Right.
But underneath the surface, this sticker is using microscopic ultrasound waves and, well, a low-level electrical current to physically force a payload of engineered molecules through your skin.
Directly into your bloodstream.
Exactly, and up into your brain, all to, force your brain to grow brand new cells on demand. Now, imagine reading the actual business plan designed to sell that sticker to you.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this, because today we are doing a deep dive into a highly detailed, honestly visionary funding proposal from the Research Integration Systems, or RIS.
Yeah, specifically their neuroregenerative division, right?
Yep.
Spearheaded by their lead investigator, Philip Adam Lillian.
Right.
And, the documents we're analyzing today are fascinating because they give us this comprehensive look at the intersection of, well, theoretical human optimization and immediate commercial strategy.
Because they're not just theorizing, right?
No, not at all. They are actively seeking over $1 million in funding right now to transform this incredibly complex biology into a scalable product that you can just go out and buy.
It's wild. And the roadmap they lay out to get that funding, I mean, it reads like a science fiction novel that just somehow leaked into the real world.
It really does.
But before we get into, like, the cyborg patches and the genetically modified probiotics they want to build, we should probably understand the underlying biology. If we're trying to trigger neurogenesis, what does that actually mean?
Well, at its simplest, neurogenesis is the birth of new neurons in the brain.
Okay.
And, for a very long time, the scientific consensus was just that humans were born with a set number of brain cells.
Yeah.
And once those cells died off due to age or injury or whatever.
That's it. Game over.
Right. That was the end of the story. Couldn't grow more.
Mm-hmm.
But we now know that's just not true. Neurogenesis is this dynamic, ongoing process that continues well into adulthood.
Mostly in specific areas, right?
Yeah. Primarily in two highly specialized niches. This is the granular zone of the hippocampus and the subventricular zone.
Okay, so the RIS proposal breaks this whole biological process down into 4 distinct stages. And to really grasp the mechanics here, I think it helps to look at it like building an expansion to a city's electrical grid.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, so stage 1 is proliferation. This is where neural stem cells start multiplying. So in our analogy, this is like the factory manufacturing just thousands of miles of raw, unassigned copper wire.
Exactly. But, that raw material is essential, but it doesn't really do anything yet, which leads to stage 2, differentiation.
Where they get a job.
Right. Those raw progenitor cells start to transition into immature neurons, which scientists call neuroblasts.
So the factory is taking that raw copper wire, stripping it, coating it in rubber, and prepping it for a specific electrical voltage.
Spot on. Then stage 3 is maturation. The biological structure gets highly complex here. The neuroblasts develop dendrites, which act as like receivers for signals, and axons, which are the transmitters to send signals out.
So they're attaching the plugs, the outlets, the heavy-duty connectors to the ends of the wires.
Yeah, perfectly prepped. And then the final hurdle, stage 4, is integration. Those mature neurons physically migrate and lock into the existing neural circuits of your brain.
And if they don't integrate?
If they don't integrate, they can't contribute to the network, and they eventually just die off.
Wow. Okay, so you take that fully connected wire, plug it into the active power grid, and the lights turn on. Now, to force this factory to work overtime, RIS outlines 2 specific biochemical payloads in their funding pitch. They call them stacks.
The stacks, yeah.
The first is the Neurogenesis support stack. And this is a combo of lion's mane mushroom, curcumin, bacopa monnieri, ginkgo biloba, and magnesium L-threonate.
And the second payload is the stem cell generation stack. That one has blueberry extract, spirulina, astaxanthin, quercetin, and melatonin.
Right.
And what's fascinating here is that almost all of these ingredients are entirely natural botanical compounds.
Right, like you could walk into a high-end health food store today and just find most of this on the shelf.
Exactly. The innovation RIS is proposing isn't inventing some new synthetic drug from scratch. It's the highly specific combination of these compounds aimed at stimulating 2 vital proteins in your body. BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and NGF, nerve growth factor.
I've seen BDNF mentioned a ton in longevity circles. What does it actually do, like for our electrical grid analogy?
Think of BDNF and NGF as the project managers on the construction site.
Okay.
You can have all the copper wire in the world, but without the managers shouting orders, coordinating the specialized coding, directing the integration.
That thing actually gets built.
Right. These proteins are the biological catalysts that force those 4 stages of neurogenesis to happen efficiently. So the botanical stacks basically signal your body to produce way more of those project managers.
But wait, if I can just go to the grocery store and buy a massive tub of blueberry extract and lion's mane powder, why do I need a high-tech bio company? Like, can't I just drink a smoothie and grow new brain cells?
I mean, you can try, but the human body is incredibly hostile to outside material. The digestive tract is basically a gauntlet of destructive acids and enzymes.
Oh, right, stomach acid.
Yeah. If you swallow these compounds, your stomach acid, your gut biome, your liver, they will aggressively break down and filter out the vast majority of that payload before it ever has a chance to reach your hippocampus.
It's doing its job, basically.
Exactly. The biological barriers are designed to keep things out.
So having the ultimate BDNF boosting super stack is completely useless if your body just incinerates it in the stomach.
Pretty much, yeah.
So how are they planning to actually get these specific compounds into the brain without just eating them? Because this is where the funding proposal gets intense.
It really does. They highlight 2 massive defensive walls they have to breach. The first is the dense protective lipid matrix of the skin.
The stratum corneum?
Right. And the second is the blood-brain barrier, which is this network of aggressive tight junctions protecting your central nervous system from toxins. So to bypass the stomach entirely, RIS is proposing what they call advanced transdermal patches.
And this isn't just like a nicotine patch that sits there passively, right? Like, I was reading the engineering specs on this, and it sounds incredibly aggressive. How does a sticker physically force a molecule through the skin?
They use a combination of physical and chemical hacks. So the first physical mechanism is called iontophoresis.
Okay.
The patches actually have microscopic electrodes embedded inside them. And because the therapeutic molecules in the botanical stacks carry an electrical charge, the patch applies a continuous low-level electrical current to your skin.
Wait, so it's using the principle of magnets. It's electrically repelling the drug away from the patch and driving it deep into the tissue.
That is the exact mechanism, electrorepulsion.
Wow.
But the electricity alone isn't enough to breach the really dense outer layers, so they combine it with sonophoresis.
Okay, this is the part that genuinely stopped me in my tracks. They want to put an ultrasound machine inside a temporary tattoo. I mean, how does that even work?
It's wild, I know. The patch contains miniature ultrasound transducers. They emit low-frequency ultrasound waves directly into the surface of your skin.
To do what?
Well, these sound waves induce a physical phenomenon called cavitation. The waves basically create microscopic, rapidly expanding and collapsing bubbles within the lipid layers of your skin.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, the sheer mechanical force of these popping microbubbles temporarily scrambles the organized structure of the skin barrier, and it creates highly permeable pathways.
And just in case the electricity and the microscopic sound wave explosions don't work, they also include microneedles, just painless microscopic needles that physically puncture tiny pores into the top layer of the skin.
Yeah.
And that is just the physical side. Like, on the chemical side, they are using compounds to essentially melt the barrier. They list DMSO, or dimethyl sulfoxide, which disrupts rigid lipid layers.
Yeah, and they use ozone to modify the structural integrity and oleic acid to actively fluidize the skin matrix.
Oh, that's a skin matrix.
Chemical permeation enhancers are aggressive. They take a barrier that is normally like a solid brick wall and turn it into a fluid, porous sponge, just long enough for the payload to slip through.
I mean, if you are listening to this and thinking, I do not want battery acid, electrical currents, and ultrasound microexplosions melting my arm, you are definitely not alone.
No, it sounds terrifying.
I have to push back on this. Is this actually safe? We are talking about electrically and chemically blasting open the body's primary defensive barrier just to deliver some lion's mane and spirulina.
Well, it's a critical question,
Mm-hmm.
and it represents the fundamental tension in advanced drug delivery. The stratum corneum is there for a reason, right? To keep deadly pathogens out and keep essential water in.
Right.
So bypassing it with this level of aggression requires really rigorous safety engineering. The proposal outlines that these patches would require built-in real-time sensors to constantly monitor skin impedance.
Okay, so it watches for damage.
Exactly. If the skin's resistance drops too low, or if the temperature spikes, the patch's microprocessor has to automatically shut down the iontophoresis and the ultrasound to prevent chemical burns or severe tissue irritation.
The sheer force required to push these molecules through the skin is just staggering. Which I guess makes sense as to why they're also proposing a secondary option that doesn't involve melting your arm.
The inhalables.
Yeah, inhalable aerosol sprays, bypassing the skin by going straight through the lungs and the nasal cavity.
The nasal cavity is a highly efficient delivery route because it offers a direct pathway to the brain. And to utilize it, RIS relies on nanoparticle encapsulation and exosome-based delivery.
Exosomes.
Yeah, exosomes are a fascinating area of biotech.
Right.
They're essentially tiny, naturally occurring vesicles derived directly from biological cells.
Like a biological Trojan horse.
That's a great way to look at it. Because exosomes come from cells, they possess what scientists call an inherent tropism. They act like biological homing pigeons. They naturally know how to navigate the body and target specific tissues.
Okay.
So by loading these exosomes with the neurotrophic factors and spraying them into the respiratory mucosa, RIS is hoping to bypass the blood-brain barrier entirely. The exosomes would use the olfactory and trigeminal nerve pathways in the nasal cavity to just slide right up into the central nervous system undetected.
Unbelievable. Okay, so the patches in the nasal sprays represent an outside-in approach, right? We're taking the payload from the outside world and forcing it into the body.
Right.
But the proposal also outlines a third technology that takes an inside-out approach. And this requires a completely different kind of engineering. Because instead of pushing BDNF into the body, they want to use engineered probiotics.
Yes. This approach heavily leverages the gut-brain axis. We often think of the brain and the digestive system as entirely separate entities, but they're physically hardwired together by the vagus nerve.
Superhighway.
Exactly. The vagus nerve acts as this massive biological superhighway, constantly transmitting chemical signals between your gastrointestinal tract and your brain.
So the logic here is, instead of fighting the stomach acid to deliver a supplement, let's just turn the gut itself into a biological factory that manufactures BDNF all day long.
Yep.
How do they actually do that?
Through the application of synthetic biology. RIS is planning to genetically engineer specific strains of probiotic bacteria. They alter the DNA of these bacteria so they naturally overexpress BDNF and produce high volumes of short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs.
Okay, but how do they survive the stomach acid to get to the gut?
To get these delicate engineered microbes past the destructive environment of the stomach, they're housed in a specialized microencapsulation shell.
Just microscopic armor plating.
Yes. The armor survives the stomach acid and dissolves in the intestines. And once there, the engineered bacteria colonize, they multiply, and they start pumping those neuroactive metabolites directly into the vagus nerve highway, sending this signal straight to the brain.
And here is where this proposal shifts from a biotechnology company to something much more comprehensive.
Definitely.
They realize that the physical hardware, right? The patches, the sprays, the mutant gut bacteria, that's only half the equation. The proposal pairs all of this with digital software.
The ecosystem.
Right. They are building a companion app to create a completely closed-loop ecosystem, which at first glance, why does a company making an ultrasound skin patch need to build an iPhone app?
Because of the biological reality of neurogenesis. Creating new brain cells is only the first step. The much more difficult challenge is ensuring those cells actually survive.
Because the brain cleans house, right?
It is incredibly efficient. If you force it to birth a new neuron, but you don't immediately give that neuron a complex task to perform, the brain's natural pruning mechanism kicks in. It assumes the cell is useless, and it essentially deletes it. Use it or lose it.
That is wild. You can go through all the trouble of ultrasounding a botanical stack into your bloodstream, but if you just sit on the couch and watch television, your brain just kills the new cells anyway.
Exactly.
So the app tracks your diet, your sleep cycles, your heart rate variability, and then it provides mindfulness sessions and very specific brain training games, like Sudoku, pattern recognition, memory match.
The underlying logic is just a brilliant synthesis of biology and behavior. The transdermal patch provides the biochemical raw materials to birth the neurons, and the digital app provides the intense cognitive demand to force those specific neurons to wire themselves into your existing networks.
So RIS is proposing an entire lifestyle infrastructure. The app dictates your daily habits to optimize the physical therapy happening at the cellular level.
It really is.
It's like hiring an incredibly demanding personal trainer, but instead of just handing you a protein shake at the gym and saying, "Good job," this trainer moves into your living room.
Oh, completely.
They track your sleep, they monitor your heart rate, and they physically force you to do heavy bicep curls while you drink the shake to ensure the protein goes exactly where they want it. It is a completely managed, unavoidable biological experience.
And, developing cyborg patches with embedded electronics engineering novel probiotic strains, and maintaining this whole closed-loop software ecosystem that requires massive capital and highly sophisticated manufacturing capabilities.
Which begs the obvious question. How is a single team paying to invent 5 different sci-fi technologies simultaneously?
The money.
The money. This brings us to the actual financial mechanics of the proposal. And for anyone listening who loves to dig into the raw numbers and the business strategy, this is where you really need to request the full proposal. Because the level of detail RIS provides is comprehensive. They have set a multi-source capital target of over $1 million.
Yeah, $1 million plus. And they detail exactly where that initial runway is going. Phase 1 has a budget allocation of $600,000, strictly dedicated to the R&D, development, and launch of the combined Neurogenesis stack and the companion app.
But to justify a $1 million ask to investors, you have to prove an immediate massive market demand. Who is buying this?
They outline 4 distinct target demographics that they believe will adopt this technology rapidly. First, the aging population, specifically the 50-plus demographic, who are increasingly concerned with age-related cognitive decline.
Well, yeah, that is an enormous market segment with a lot of disposable income.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Second, professionals and executives seeking optimized cognitive performance. This captures the aggressive biohacker and productivity-focused crowd.
Silicon Valley, basically.
Right. Third, students and academics requiring enhanced memory retention for high-pressure environments. And fourth, actual neurology patients who are actively seeking complementary repair therapies.
But the unit economics they detail are where things get slightly concerning. Like, they outline the actual manufacturing process for these transdermal patches, and it is a logistical nightmare compared to a standard supplement pill.
Oh, absolutely.
They can't just press these out on an assembly line. The patches require layer-by-layer substrate assembly. They have to use photolithography, which is essentially using light to etch microscopic channels into a material just to create the drug delivery pathways. Plus, they have to integrate the microelectronics for the iontophoresis electrodes.
It's essentially manufacturing a microchip.
Exactly. And because of this extreme complexity, the proposal notes that peak production cost scales up to $5 per patch unit.
And that production cost is highly significant.
So what does this all mean, like, for the everyday consumer? If it costs the manufacturer $5 just to assemble one single disposable patch, the retail price has to be substantially higher to maintain any margin. Will this regenerative technology actually be accessible to the average person, or is this destined to be a luxury optimization tool exclusively for wealthy executives who can afford a $100 a week patch habit?
That is the central tension in commercializing any cutting-edge biotechnology. I mean, to drive the consumer price down, they have to achieve massive manufacturing scale. And to build that scale, they need massive upfront capital.
Right.
Hence the multi-source funding architecture.
Yeah.
They aren't relying on a single venture capitalist. They're strategically splitting the risk across 4 completely different sectors.
Right. They break the funding down into quadrants. They list public and philanthropic, which includes massive crowdfunding campaigns like Kickstarter, then private capital targeting specialized biotech VCs and angel investor networks.
And corporate partnerships.
Yeah, explicitly looking for strategic licensing deals with pharmaceutical giants like Biogen and Roche, likely to leverage their existing manufacturing infrastructure. And finally, government grants targeting the NIH and DARPA.
The specific inclusion of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, is a very notable detail here.
Why is that?
It suggests that RIS is actively pitching the military and defense applications of cognitive enhancement. Rapid neural repair and accelerated learning would be incredibly valuable assets for military personnel.
Wow. But securing this initial $1 million funding round is really just the down payment. The RIS proposal makes it explicitly clear that these immediate commercial products, the patches, the sprays, the app, are merely a stepping stone.
Just phase 1.
Right. They're using the revenue from these localized products to finance a long-term roadmap that sounds entirely theoretical.
Yeah, the final section of the proposal outlines their 22nd century horizon. They're projecting a visionary framework for their long-term investors, detailing technologies that are currently in their absolute infancy or just exist only on chalkboards.
They literally want to take the revenue from the lion's mane transdermal patches and use it to build brain-embedded nanobots.
Nanobots.
We are talking about nanoscale robots designed to physically navigate the bloodstream, cross the blood-brain barrier on their own, and directly stimulate highly specific neural circuits from the inside.
It's incredible. And they also propose the integration of genetic and bioelectronic innovation. Specifically, they outline plans to use CRISPR-Cas8 gene editing to permanently modulate a human's gene expression to favor neuronal growth.
Wait, so they don't just want to temporarily boost your BDNF, they want to edit your actual DNA so your brain just naturally builds more neurons on autopilot forever.
Exactly. And alongside that genetic modification, they highlight optogenetics.
Now, I've seen that term thrown around a lot. What does optogenetics actually look like in practice?
It's a deeply complex mechanism, but fundamentally it involves introducing specialized light-sensitive proteins into specific neurons in the brain.
Okay.
Once those proteins are integrated, scientists can literally control neural activity by firing targeted pulses of light. You can turn a brain cell on or off exactly like a light switch, potentially triggering neurogenesis with absolute precision.
And the absolute wild card on their roadmap,
Yeah.
quantum neural interfaces. They propose manipulating neuronal patterns at the subcellular level with ultra-high precision, utilizing quantum fields to influence neural coherence. I mean, the conceptual leap from we made a nice blueberry and ginkgo biloba nasal spray to we are going to manipulate your brain cells at the quantum level is staggering.
It is. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to understand why a lead investigator includes such incredibly futuristic, almost speculative concepts in a pitch deck for immediate funding.
Why do they?
Pitching a 22nd century vision accomplishes two strategic goals. First, it assures investors that the company isn't just building a single, easily replicable widget.
Like they aren't just selling a vitamin that a competitor can copy next week.
Right. And second, it signals that their ultimate ambition is to monopolize the entire future of human cognitive evolution. They want to own the foundational intellectual property for how humanity upgrades its own brain for the next 100 years.
It is an absolute masterclass in pitching. You hook them with the immediate revenue of a supplement, and you sell them the future of the human race.
Yeah.
So let's bring it all together. We started by looking at a funding proposal from RIS that plans to commercialize the biological process of neurogenesis. They're taking natural botanical stacks, things like lion's mane and spirulina, and combining them with highly aggressive delivery mechanisms.
Utilizing iontophoresis patches with microelectrodes, sonophoresis ultrasound to induce cavitation, and chemical enhancers like DMSO to bypass the skin's lipid layers.
Right, all alongside engineered probiotics wrapped in microencapsulation to hijack the gut-brain axis.
All of which is managed by a closed-loop companion app that tracks your sleep and forces you to play Sudoku to ensure those new neurons actually integrate into your brain.
Exactly. And they are funding this through a massive $1 million multi-source strategy, seeking capital from Kickstarter all the way up to DARPA, with the ultimate goal of financing a 22nd century future filled with nanobots, gene editing, and quantum neural interfaces.
It's just a comprehensive blueprint for turning raw biological potential into a sprawling commercial empire.
And reading through it leaves you with a lot to process. Because, I mean, if this funding proposal actually succeeds, and we eventually reach a point where we have a perfectly closed loop system. Wait, a perfectly closed loop system where an app on your phone and a sticker on your arm can actively trigger, dictate, and guide the birth of new neurons in your brain on demand. What happens to our fundamental sense of identity?
That's the real question.
It's like the ship of Theseus, but for your mind. If you are constantly purposefully forcing new neural circuits to grow, overriding your natural biology to optimize your performance for a job or for an exam, at what point do you stop being the person you naturally were and simply become a product of your own programming? You thought you were just reading a business plan for a biotech startup, but you're actually looking at the architectural blueprints for a brand new you.